All right, everybody, on my next little project, as you can see, I need to make a threshold, and that's pretty high. And I tried it before, and I went, like the board I had on top, I run on a table saw and made a bunch of curves, and I was breaking them out. Unfortunately, I pushed too hard, and it snapped it. So I have to make a new one. So I went and bought some 1x4x4, 1x4x4, and 1/4 inch for the top part. Now I'm going to have to glue all these together, but I have to cut these first to bring it up, and then this is going to be on top to make the transition into there. Then I'm going to have to bevel it and everything. So let's get gluing these together. And I have to measure how wide it is. I have to, fix this and make this all look pretty. So let's get on with this. Measure this across and do some cutting. All right, now what I got to do is I measured it up 1.25 inches to the living room floor to the kitchen, and I have to buzz off 1/2 inch off this board. So I'll rip it on the table saw. Even though the blade doesn't go too far, I'll rip it one way and then I'll flip it over and I'll rip it through this way. So I'll get that done. Okay, now that I ripped it, now it's 1.5 inches from here to there. Now I just have to glue them all together and use a few clamps to clamp it all together. All right, now I got it all clamped up, glued and clamped up. The glue I use, it's not this, it's called wood glue, but it's called Titebond. And they make different ones, different strengths. And this is the next one down from I think it's the blue bottle. But this is Titebond 2 or 3, I can't remember. But it's the next one down from, I think there's 3 or 4 different kinds. But we're going to let that dry. And I'll have to cut the bevel and stuff on it, so it's a nice smooth transition going into the kitchen. All right, now that I got it all glued together, I have to set up my table saw to cut this. I'll show you. To cut this at like an angle here, so this will be going into the kitchen. You don't want to stub your toe onto that, that'll hurt. So let me cut that off, and then I'll go on to the next step. So as you can see, I put my gauge, the table saw, at 25 degrees, and I cut that little ramp. So now, what I pretty much have to do is just sand it, and I'll get on with that with my sander. I'll just hit it with some 80 grit to take the saw blade marks out of there, because you'll be able to see those quite easy when you put a stain and finish on them. So I'll sand it, and then we'll get on to the next step. Alright, now that I'm all done with that, let's get some stain on this sucker. Alright, the stain I'm going to use is this dark walnut. And so it matches pretty much matches the wood of the house. And look, that's a wrong screwdriver. I wanted a minus. I got a plus. I can't use a plus to open that thing up. Anyways, I'm just getting an old shop towel. Just regular shop towel. Don't be afraid. I mean, you could put gloves on. That's what I think I'm going to get. I'm going to get some latex gloves so I don't have to wash my hands with that stuff. I'll be right back. All right, got my gloves. If you get some, like, this stain on your fingers, and if you don't have gloves, you can use WD-40. It'll spray it on your hands and it'll take it right off. And WD-40 is also good for a lot of things, like getting tar off of clothes. I'm trying to get more on here. More on here. Okay. There you go. I mean, just try to get it as even as you can. If you need to put it a little bit more, rub a little bit more in certain spaces, and just rub a little bit more. Some people will use a brush. I don't like to use brushes because it puts it on too thick. It's way too dark. This way I usually just use a towel, and you can just throw it away when you're done. Like my favorite color of stain is probably golden oak, and the same company makes it. Make sure you get all of the edges and ends, and there you go. I'm all done. Now I'll let this dry, and I'll spray some finish on it. Alright, so now this is dry. Now all I have to do is spray some finish on it. A few coats of this. It's polyurethane. These are shelves I'm putting in, I made, so spray it. I'm going to go even, not real heavy. This stuff dries pretty quick on the first couple of coats. So that will dry like in a couple minutes. It's already soaking in. I'm going to put a couple coats on it, and then I'll sand them in between. Like I'll put like 3 or 4 coats, let it cure solid, and then I'll sand it, and then put a couple more coats, and then feel it if it needs more sanding. I'll sand it, and I'll probably put like 4 or 5 coats of urethane on this. So I'll keep spraying it as the day goes on. Okay, you can see how shiny it is. It's kind of rough, so I'm going to take some 100 grit sandpaper. I'll sand it down and probably spray it again a couple more times. It's just really, it's rough. All right, I'm almost all done. I got the holes, I pre-drilled like a pilot hole in there, and then I used a bigger bit to countersink the screws. I didn't have the screws that I wanted, and I should have went in about a ½ inch more. But anyways, I didn't have the screws I wanted. I wanted some black screws, but I figured these will work good. And I have the, what's those, Torx bit. It takes a star bit. You can call them star bits too. So, and I'm going to use that, and I'm going to screw them right in. So, it fits right in there. Looks good. Much better, like a finished look. So let's screw them in, and then that's it. All right, there it's installed. And I didn't want to use construction adhesive to put this down because you'd have to pry it up and possibly break this part off. They have nails for these that you can just nail down in there, but they're not long enough, and I don't want to use nails because they're hard to get out and you'd have to damage it. This way you just put a screw in there, a bit in there, and then pull that right out, and if you ever had to replace it or anything. So there you go. That's installed. Looks pretty good. Thanks for watching.